Illinois defeats Iowa State 72-69. That was a really fun game, really cool. And still at the end of the game, Coleman Hawkins decided to like dive off the court looking for that one ball. Which we could talk about that for a minute if we want to. And then obviously the loss with UConn going on their 30-0 run like toward the end of the first half or something. I mean, that was
Yeah,
just
it
like
was keeping track
ridiculous.
though.
Yeah, right. Like they brought that number up, and I like my heart literally sank. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, how does that, how does that happen? But Shaps, obviously you're the one that was the most dialed in on these two games. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, the Iowa State game was interesting because it was not a pretty game. We all, talked about it leading up and the fact that it was the number one offense against the number one defense in the country. So, which one's going to win out? And Illinois definitely dominated the game in the first half, actually led throughout the game too. Shannon was unstoppable in the first half as he had been for the past month. Showed why he was the best player in the tournament at that time. Things got pretty sloppy in the second half. Shannon got into foul trouble, had to sit for a long time. Incredible that he scored 29 points in 22 minutes in that game. But I was really impressed with Illinois in that one because I thought Brad did a good job coaching and made the adjustments that we needed to make and won a game in a way that we had not won games recently. More so like mucking it up on the defensive end and when the shots weren't falling for a long time. So like the Java men were pretty happy with the way that game went because we showed like we could win in multiple ways. Even, when not playing our best basketball. And that was probably the best team that we've beaten in almost 2 seasons. Brad has been criticized for not being able to beat those top level teams. And Iowa State was no question a top level team, maybe not the same level of talent as some of those, as a Yukon or something, but, a really, really good team that was, inches away from being a 1 seed, beat the snot out of Houston, the week before. So really impressive win over Iowa State. We were feeling pretty good, obviously. But, we were happy that Brad got the monkey off his back getting into the second weekend. And we were ecstatic with the chance to go to a Final Four. But that ended really quickly when we ran into the juggernaut of UConn. It was a very, very strange start to the game. I think we got down 9-0 almost immediately. It was clear that we had the wrong game plan from the very start. The game plan seemed to be go right at that monster, the Klingon, down low, and that was the wrong game plan. And then on top of that, we weren't making shots. We were able to hang around in the first half because UConn could not make a thing. So while some, might have been optimistic being only down a couple points at halftime, I was extremely nervous because I'd watched many UConn games. And I think I said this in the Java group chat during halftime. I said, this first couple minutes of the second half is everything because this is exactly where UConn just puts teams away. Hurley makes his adjustments during halftime and they come out and they just bury you. It happens all the time in their games. Teams kind of hang around with them, and then within the first, 6 minutes of the second half, they're up by double digits almost every time. So when Brad rolled out Ty Rodgers to start the second half again, I knew the game was over. It was over.
Yeah.
The second half started exactly like how the game started. UConn goes on a run. Ty Rodgers gets pulled basically 2 minutes into the second half. Well, why wouldn't you just not start him in the second half? I don't know if he thinks like you have to start the same lineup at the start of the game in the second half, And then to add to that lack of adjustment, we just couldn't make a shot for our lives. Shannon was pretty much taken out of the game. Brad said during halftime too that we were just going to keep go. He said, I think the quote was, "I don't care if he blocks 300 shots. We're going to keep going at him," which doesn't really make any sense. UConn was, I think, 4th in the country at defense at the rim. And our best asset is the ability to spread the floor. You got to get Klingon out of the paint. So the game plan didn't really make sense to me. It was really a perfect storm of a bad game plan and a lack of anybody really showing up. Any of our big players just had their worst games. Basically, you have to play a perfect game to beat UConn, and we really couldn't have played much worse. So that was kind of the result. We were 0 of 19 against Klingon on shots that he contested, which is an unbelievable stat. When he was on the floor, we basically just did not score any points. We should have been shooting more threes from the start. We only shot 7 threes in the first half. Probably should have been like double that. So yeah, the lack of adjustment, the lack of shot making, led to a historically incredible run by UConn, 30-0 run. So yeah, it was a disappointing finish to a really good season. But unfortunately, yeah, the game was over the second half started.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like I didn't hate the game plan of going at Klingon at the beginning. Like with the first 5 minutes, just go straight at him and see if you can get him to pick up a foul or two and maybe get him in trouble and get him off the court. And obviously that opens things up for you a little bit more. So I don't know if I like Ty Rodgers being in there. I think you probably need Luke Goody in there instead to keep Klingon honest. But at the end of the day, like they just weren't getting the calls, and I felt like they went after him pretty well. I think there was some questionable, I'm not going to say either way, but I think there could have been calls on Klingon. I'm not saying it was necessarily the wrong call that it wasn't called on him, but there could have been some calls. And if you get 1 or 2 of those, then it's a completely different game at that point. Because like you said, I mean, literally the only time they couldn't score was when Klingon was on the court. If he was off the court, it was open season.
Yeah, we were close. Yeah, they definitely could have called that second foul on him, like late in the first half. It's just that it's not like we haven't played a player like him before. We get to face Zach Edey multiple times, and we saw how that worked out when he was guarding Ty Rodgers. It just doesn't work. You have to go to your strength, which is our ability to spread the floor. You have to get Klingon out of the paint. You have to get Zach Edey out of the paint. So didn't like the game plan. I understand what he was trying to do, but it was very clear that it wasn't working very early on, and we didn't see any adjustment. That was the problem. Okay, the game plan is this. Okay, it's not working. Try something else, and we didn't see that, unfortunately, in this game.
Yeah, I mean, there should have been a second option. There should have been something else that Brad could have went to in a pinch or something like that. But I mean, that's kind of what you get with Brad Underwood, right? We've talked about it a lot this season. He has trouble adjusting during the games. He can build a roster, and he can do a really good job of getting the right guys on the court to mesh well together and work well together. But at the end of the day, he does fail in those in games. Not all the time, but sometimes he will fail in those in game adjustments, and that's obviously really hard. So, Kent, your thoughts?
Specifically about that game plan, I was just pulling this up on my phone. I had a live tweet that said, attacking the basket against the tallest dude on the floor is not working. That was my official expert analysis mid-game there. And I think Shaps will agree with me on that. I didn't like that game plan at all. I definitely think they should have stopped doing that almost immediately. don't have a ton of other thoughts. I think obviously Shaps like covers Illinois way better than I'm going to say anything about them. But it is interesting though when you look at these two games. And again, like when I'm going through my tweets, like that's kind of how I remember games. Is I'll go back to tweets that I did like live during the game, and immediately during the Iowa State game, I said my basketball eyes are saying that Illinois is better. Like almost immediately, you can see that. And it's kind of been a theme in Illinois games this year. Like immediately in the UConn game, I was like, man, if this is going to continue, like in the first 5 minutes, you can get a vibe like this is not going to end well. And I felt that vibe in both games. Like I was very confident in the Iowa State game, like right off the tip. I was like, this team is way better than them right now. On this night, I'm not saying that they're way better than them every single night, but on this night, Illinois is much better than Iowa State. And then I felt the exact opposite way when I was watching the UConn game. So it's just tough, man. Like I was telling Shaps before we started recording, though, great season for Illinois, though. They have nothing to be ashamed of. Like, I think that they met expectations for this year. Some people in my mention said that they exceeded expectations because they were picked to be third in the Big Ten as opposed to second. And they were really the second best team in the Big Ten throughout the year. I mean, you have a banner. You got a Big Ten tournament championship. You got to the Elite Eight for the first time since – you got to the Sweet 16 for the first time since – I think it was 2005. I don't know when the last time the Elite Eight happened. Shaps, when was that?
Same year.
Oh, the same year was 2005. Okay, so
yeah, when they went to the championship.
I mean, like Brad Underwood, like I like to listen to some of the stuff after the game, almost even more than like what happened in the game, because you know Brad was talking about after the game, like we're not going away. Like this is going to be a contender every year. We will be back next year. This is going to happen again. So. I like the fire. I think that Illinois had a great year. It was very fun to follow this team this year. It was very fun to watch them in person for the 3 or 4 games that I got to see them in Minnesota. So great season for them. Nothing to be ashamed of. Like I said, a great year.
Yeah, no, this was his best coaching job was this season, I thought. Terrence Shannon had one of the best seasons of an Illinois player in history. So it was an incredible season. Underwood is an elite program builder and an improving coach. He's just very stubborn at times. But he got the monkey off his back, got to the second weekend, basically has a contract for life now, in our eyes and probably in the administration's eyes. He got us back to where we belong, which is in the conversation of the top programs in the country, competing for championships in the Big Ten, obviously, and trying to get to Final Fours. You know, you're one of the last 8 teams standing. It's really hard to do. So we're very grateful for Undy and the program that he's built for us.
And I want to bring this up because I've had this thought, and I need you guys to confirm it. Shaps, I feel like you will, but Illinois was number 4 in the media preseason poll. Illinois was still one of the 4 best teams in this tournament, in my mind, because if they played any other team other than UConn or Purdue, Illinois is most likely in the Final Four right now. I mean, Alabama doesn't beat them. Clemson doesn't beat them. Duke doesn't beat them. NC State doesn't beat them. In Tennessee, maybe, but I still don't think Tennessee does.
NC State? NC State?
I don't think NC State beats them.
Have you seen them play?
I have seen them play, but they also
seen this guy DJ Burns.
I have seen DJ Burns, but I also don't.
Do you not? I feel like you don't believe in March Madness right now, dude.
Well,
like, or March Magic,
on
I
paper,
should say. Do you believe in the magic of March?
Yeah. Like Magic Christmas too? Yeah. I believe in all the magic.
I don't think DJ Burns loses to the Lakers right now.
So you're going to pick DJ Burns to beat Zach Edey then?
Definitely not on this show. I'm not.
But I mean, just like if you look at it, if Illinois plays any of these other teams other than Purdue, I think they have a very, very good shot of making it into the Final Four. Sure, DJ Burns might have his magic. That's fine. But at the end of the day, like, I think this team and Purdue were the worst possible matchups for them to get into the Final Four, and unfortunately, they just played UConn because they were put in the most difficult region of the NCAA tournament. I mean, I don't think there's any question that was the most difficult region, right?
Yeah, it was a tough draw with UConn. It's a tough draw, but we had a very, very good draw in the first couple of games. So tends to balance out sometimes like that. Unfortunately, yeah, we ran into a historically good team.
Yep.
Yeah, we could have competed a lot better against non-UConn teams, I would imagine. But also, if we shot the ball like we did against UConn, it would not have mattered.
That's true. That's true. Etch asks, JR, do you think Underwood is above criticism? I don't know whose criticism, but the criticism, like, I think he deserves the criticism for being an in-game coach, especially in this situation here where he didn't adjust the way he should have. But, like, I mean, I feel like you got what you wanted from Underwood this season. Like, it sucks because, like, you wanted more for Coleman Hawkins. You wanted more for, all the other seniors on this team. There's so many of them, but I mean, you wanted more for all of those guys, but at the end of the day, and I know they're doing that like waiver thing for Domask. He's probably not going to get it, so he's probably not going to come back, but like, you hate that for them. But at the end of the day, like, if somebody was like, man, that stinks that you have Underwood as your coach after this year, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is, this is a top 10 coach in college basketball in my mind. Like, not saying that he's, like the best or anything, but I would be very, very happy if Brad Underwood were my head coach because of the way that he's able to put a roster together. And like you just said, Kent, March has magic to it. And so all you got to do is catch that magic one year and you can find yourself in the national championship game. And then it's just, does the ball bounce the right way a few times? So I don't know.
We're not going to revisit the big banter coaches power rankings from the preseason.
Yeah.
Was I on that show?
No, that was, I don't know what Big Banter was doing there. Then I think he was
quite the
like
list
8th or something like that. He was barely top 10 in the Big Ten.
Somebody will tell me in the comments. I think he was like 6th or 7th. So yeah, he was something like that. He was in like not the top half.
I'll have to go.
Hey, he can be second as far as I'm concerned, as long as he's behind my boy Collins. That's all I care about. That's my boy.
Chris Collins, number 1, huh?
That's
Chris
fine.
Collins, number 1 in my heart. And then
That's
anybody
fine. I
else
still
after
didn't
that,
take them seriously though the entire season, JR.
I believe you, Sheps. Even when they beat Dusty May in Florida Atlantic, right?
No, FAU stunk.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even after they beat them, you still didn't take them seriously.
Yeah, I told the Java men that if they beat UConn, I would take them seriously. I would officially
obviously.
If they beat UConn, that would cancel out the loss to Chicago State.
You lose.
That's
to one
harsh.
Of the worst teams.
That's harsh, Shaps. Come on, man.
That's funny.
I don't make the rules. That's the decision tree is what it is. It's did you lose to Chicago State? If the answer is yes, I don't take you seriously. If the answer is no, I can take you seriously.
Wow, that's tough, man. That's a tough decision tree right there.
That's awesome. Yeah, Illini Cast says Underwood was 8th in the B-ball poll.
Yikes.
I can't even fathom who was in front of I bet Chris Holtman was in front of him, and that would... Wow.
Yes, he was, for sure.
What about Howard? Where was he at?
Hopefully last. I don't know. All right, here's the rankings. Matt Painter, Tom Izzo, Fran McCaffrey, number 3, Steve Peichel, who his entire team disagrees with this because they've left and gone into the portal. Mike Woodson, obviously does not believe in 3-pointers. Somehow he is 5th. Chris Collins, there you go. He's underrated for you there. And yes, Chris Holtman, 1 spot above Brad Underwood. The crazy amount of issues with that right there. And there's your boy Juwan Howard there for you, Kent. So, yeah, these were the Big Banter Big Ten coach rankings. And if I'm not mistaken, we didn't vote on those, right, Shaps? Like, we weren't allowed to vote on those.
I don't think so. No, we destroyed them in our early season podcast.
As you should. As you should.
That's it. That's it. That was an interesting list to go back to because of both the top and the bottom. Like Ben Johnson being last is interesting to me because of how good of a season he had this year. I mean, I know they still finished like 10th in the Big Ten, but like still a big improvement for Minnesota this year. But also Matt Painter being first based on what in the preseason? I don't really understand that. Like obviously he's earned that now at this point, but in the preseason that doesn't make any sense to me. No offense to Purdue fans who already like love me so much.
Yeah, I mean, he came off the win from the Big Ten the year before, so I guess that, does it for him. But yeah, Bootzilla, Underwood 8th. That was these are not our rankings, by the way. Please do not think that I made those rankings. Please, for the love of everything, do not think I made those rankings. Do not put those rankings on me. But yeah, that's what we're talking about is just like absolutely insane what those rankings were. So